Hello world, this is Jurgen Appelo with episode 4 of 15 Minutes on Air, and we're starting with the end of the year, and that also means the end of the conference season for me. And the last conference I have attended was last week in Sweden, in Stockholm. It was called the Agile HR conference. And I have with me here Pia-Maria Thorén from Sweden, who was one of the organizers. Hello, Pia-Maria.
Hello, Jurgen. How nice to see you again, and thank you for attending the conference.
It was a pleasure, and thank you for inviting me. So it was a great conference, and probably the first one, I think, that was about the combination Agile and human resources. So I have a couple of questions for you. The first one is what did you learn yourself from Agile HR last week? Yeah,
really, I had a lot of fun at the conference, and I think that was part of the purpose of the conference. I'm now convinced that a small group of dedicated people can really change the world, because I saw so much dedication and so much discussion going on in the conference and in the breaks between all the great speakers that we had. I'm now convinced that you can create engagement and dedication with the right speakers if you have a common purpose, you have a common sense, and you have a good environment where you have the conference and so on. And what else did I learn? Well, I think the most important things that you need really to influence others is a common purpose and a great bunch of engaged audience as well. And I think a brilliant example of that is Bjarte Bogsnäs, who said that all you need is persistence. He has been trying to work for 20 years within Statoil to change Statoil, which is a huge organization. And I think he was a very good example of an extremely engaged person who really managed to get the crowd with him. And everybody said afterwards that he was really fantastic, because you could really see that he was burning for his subject and the things that he's doing at Statoil.
Yeah, I agree there. He had an amazing talk. It was very, very inspiring. I was happy to have attended. So, and one thing that I learned, by the way, is that apparently the Dutch are the least engaged employees in Europe. That is something that you shared with us. How do you think how does that come? Where does it come from?
Well, this one came from a Gallup exercise that was made in, let me see now, 146 countries, with 230,000 employees participating in this survey. So, I mean, it should be quite good data and reliable, this investigation. That was really interesting, by the way. It was on the newspaper here in Sweden just 2 weeks ago, and I saw it and I said, this is perfect for our conference to put it on as a first thing to announce. And I mean, Sweden was not really any better. I think 70% are not engaged in Sweden as well, and 12% are actively disengaged. And then there is only 16% who are really engaged in Sweden. And the average in Europe is around 14%, I learned as well. So these are scaring facts, I would say.
Yes, I agree, and maybe Sweden and the Netherlands are bad, but in other parts of the world it was even worse. So
it was even worse, yeah.
Exactly.
Like China, 4%.
4%, my God. So next conference, perhaps Agile HR in China.
Exactly.
So speaking of countries, do you know any differences between HR in different parts of the world? Does human resources mean something different in Scandinavia as compared in, I don't know, China or the United States or whatever?
I thought about that, and Actually, I don't think so. I think it has more to do with company culture than the actual geographic or country culture. Because I have experience from working in many big companies who have offices all over the world, like SKF, Tetra Pak, and Volvo Cars. And all these companies are Swedish in culture, so to speak. So if you go to SKF India, for example, they are extreme. They have adopted the Swedish culture within SKF. So they are more Swedish in the company in India than really they have the Indian culture. So I think it has more to do with company culture, how HR is. Okay. I don't think it's a great difference, really. I think HR is a quite, a group that is very similar everywhere in the world.
Okay, that's certainly interesting, because one of the questions that I get very often is how is management different in different parts of the world, or how have you recognized differences between Agilists in Europe versus China versus South America, etc. And as I keep telling everyone, there are different dimensions of culture. Indeed, there is a geographical dimension. The culture in China is different than
China is an exception, I would say.
Yeah, but on the other hand, the company culture and the culture of the profession, like for example, account managers versus testers, that makes much more of a difference than the geographical differences.
Yeah, I think so too. But China is really a special case, I would say. And I think that HR is very much trying to control managers in China. They do it in Sweden too, and in other countries too. But I think very much more in China. Just as managers are controlling a lot, and they need to control the workforce because they have a totally other kind of culture than what we have in Sweden, and probably in your country as well, Jürgen.
Okay. Well, either way, I'm sure that we can learn a lot from all of us together. But one thing that I did hear, by the way, about the human resources in the U.S. as an interesting difference is that in the USA, HR is much more concerned with not getting sued by anyone.
Yeah.
As compared with HR in human or in the European countries.
Yes.
I would believe that human resources in France is primarily concerned with having people show up and not starting another strike or something like that.
That's part of the country culture, of course. Yeah. So there are certain differences.
Exactly. So here's an interesting question for you that just popped to my mind. There are some people who say, "Oh, we don't need human resources. We have an agile organization," and sometimes they say, "We don't need managers." Other people say, "We don't need HR. We can do our recruiting ourselves and personal development ourselves." So, what is your response to that? I'm interested.
Yeah, I agree that not all companies have to have the role human resource manager or human resource business partner or whatever roles you can find within HR. But you need to do the tasks that are connected to taking care of people in the organization. It doesn't necessarily have to be HR who does that. So it could be done by managers. In some cases, maybe some of the tasks can even be distributed to the employees. In some cases, it's practical to have the professional HR and a specialized workforce for this. But it's not that we need the role HR. It's more that we need to take care of the tasks that HR is performing, and whatever role could do that. And you, as well as I, know that we don't need to get hung up on the roles and titles of people, but we need to do certain tasks and do certain pieces of work in the organization, of which one is people management. and you need to have expertise in some areas to be able to do people management well, and that may be where HR comes in. I mean, when it comes to transactional HR, you could very well outsource. I mean, paying salaries and so on is nothing that you need really to have in-house in a large company. It could be outsourced. So when we talk about strategic HR, you definitely need to have a strategy for how and who you recruit, how you develop people, how you build their competencies and skills, and how they learn, and how you compensate them. This is something that all organizations need, some strategy for that. How do we do this in our organization? And that could, of course, change, but some people need to be responsible for it and to make sure that it happens.
Okay, so that makes sense. And you said the difference is between transactional versus strategic HR, where transactional is about mundane stuff like making sure that people are getting paid and stuff like that, and the strategic HR stuff is concerned with what kind of people do we need next year, and how are we going to develop their skills. That is clearly not something that you can simply outsource to China or something like that.
No, I think the most important thing is how do we motivate and engage people? How do we make them perform towards a common vision? That's really where we need to excel as an organization in this area. So I see performance management as the heart of talent management, and this is what you really need to focus on. And if you apply Agile values to talent management and performance management, then you have a much better chance of motivating than if you work with a traditional kind of performance appraisals and so on.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So, we have about 3 minutes left. Look.
Okay, great.
And I have one last question for you. Sweden and the other Scandinavian countries in general are famous for topping the rankings in terms of work-life balance and happiness of people in the countries, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, what can the rest of the world learn from how the Swedes manage their organizations and HR in particular? How can we all get 8 weeks of vacation, Pia-Maria?
8? We don't have 8 weeks. We have 5 weeks actually, so that's a misunderstanding. Some people get 6 weeks, but then you don't have any pay for overtime. So 5 weeks is the rule, and 6 weeks if you don't have any pay for overtime. What can other countries learn? Well, I think the most important word that comes to my mind when you ask that is really trust. To trust your employees and to delegate as much responsibility as possible to employees and teams. That's what I think that other countries could learn the most. And what else? Trust, fun, recognition. I think Swedes are quite good at recognizing employees as well, actually. They have a natural tendency to say that well done, or, you know, pat each other on the back and so on. So that's probably something that other countries could learn from a Swedish way of management. I think the Swedish management is very much like management 3.0. It fits extremely well into our culture. So they should just study your framework here again, and then they know what they can learn.
Well, thank you for promoting it, and maybe that is why I keep being re-invited to Sweden, because they like the work so much. There seems to be a perfect fit indeed with the culture over there. And as for recognizing, look. Well done. I'm going to write your name here, Pia-Maria, later on. I will do that later on.
Perfect.
So thank you very much for attending. We are now 15 minutes, so I'm going to wrap this up. Thanks for attending this 15 minutes on air. I learned a little bit more about what HR means. 2 different forms of HR. I didn't know that. That's useful.
Yeah. And thank you again for the opportunity to attend. I hope we can do this again sometime. That was fun.
Okay, good. Well, let's schedule another talk in a couple of months or so.
And maybe we can go more into Agile, you know, different parts of Agile HR and so on, and discuss that. That would be great.
There's a lot more to talk about. I agree. So thanks, Pia-Maria. And next week, I'm sure we're going to talk with somebody who is also very, very interesting about another topic close to Agile. Thanks for watching, and goodbye, world.
Goodbye.